Know this, Pitocin for labor is never an emergency. I was taught this in my first year as a labor and delivery nurse by a brilliant senior nurse, and I've kept that with me for the rest of my career. If your baby needs to be born emergently, then you need a C-section. You may have medical indications that necessitate expediting your baby's birth, and that's what Pitocin is used for. But if there are any doubts about the use of Pitocin, you can always request for the pit to be shut off. It's within your rights as a patient.
Giving birth is one of the most significant events of your life. Sadly, the joy that you should feel can often be replaced with anxiety and helplessness instead. As a labor and delivery nurse, I'm revealing insider information to educate you, reassure you, and decrease your fear. In this podcast, you'll hear empowering birth stories and experts weigh in on a range of topics. Being Jewish also has me exploring Judaism's influence on the reproductive experience. However, I speak to anyone wishing to navigate their journey with more joy and confidence. I'm your host, Chani Fingerer, and you're listening to the Happy Birthday Podcast.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Happy Birthday Podcast. Just kidding. Welcome to episode 59. I know I'm not even going to say what I know because you also know it, but just consider me on maternity leave, okay? I have 9 puppies at home right now, together with 1 mama dog, and again, you will know what this episode was really supposed to be. It's going to happen. I'm going to give you, hopefully, God willing, in the next episode, the continuation of the puppy's story. But right now, I have a fire lit up under my tuchus thanks to a bunch of conversations that we were having on Instagram stories that made me realize, I don't know why I didn't do a Pitocin episode yet, okay? It's like the very obvious thing, but anyway, I'm going to do it now. What happened was I was talking about my nurse expert witness work because, among other things, I had a deposition in the past few days that I had to give, and for testifying about the standard of care in a case that happened. And I put up a question box on Instagram stories for people to ask me all about this work that I do. And so several people asked, like, what are, examples of cases that you give your opinion on? And, like, what are examples of common medical malpractice things that you see in the world of obstetrics? And the number one thing is where Pitocin was not administered appropriately. That's, like, the number one kind of situation. And as a result, it caused bad things. So people started writing to me, I didn't know anything about that. Nobody ever told me anything about Pitocin, being, able to cause damage. And so many people, I wrote a few things about Pitocin on my stories, and many people messaged me they never said anything. They just told me that, they wanted to give me more contractions and started Pitocin, and people were really upset. So this is my time right now. I'm going to give you a spiel. I would say that 75% of the spiel is a spiel that I give to every single one of my patients before I start their Pitocin, because they should be able to be making an informed they should be able to have an informed understanding of what is going on. At that point that I'm giving them the spiel, they're about to start the Pitocin, so they've already agreed to it. And the things that I tell them, usually people don't tell them beforehand. So I'm glad I have the opportunity to tell them, but it's definitely something that's better that you know ahead of time. And I'm also going to add a few other things that you can only talk about ahead of time so that you can go in informed to your labor, because Pitocin is probably the most common drug given to patients in labor. So it's probably good for you to know about it, even if you don't think that you're going to have it. Pitocin postpartum is a separate topic that I'm going to cover in another episode. Okay, so Pitocin is used for an induction of labor and also an augmentation of labor. An induction of labor is when you are not in labor yet at all, and an augmentation of labor is when you are speeding up your labor but you're already in labor. For an induction of labor, there are 2 classifications. One is a medical induction of labor, which there is some medical indication that is showing us that it would be more beneficial for your baby to be born at this point than stay inside and for the mother to be pregnant for longer, or an elective induction, which can happen 39 weeks and somewhere between 39 and 41 weeks, is where a mother can elect to induce her baby. It would not be dangerous for her baby to be born, but there's no actual medical indication at that time that would show that it would be more risky for her baby to remain inside of her or for her to remain pregnant. I can't get into the medical indications for an induction right now. That we can save for another episode. Okay, so what exactly is Pitocin? Pitocin is a synthetic form of the same hormone that your body makes when you are in labor, which is called oxytocin. And labor is different when there's Pitocin instead of a spontaneous labor when your body produces its own oxytocin. Because when your body produces its own oxytocin, your brain also releases other hormones like endorphins, which help as an analgesic. They actually help you cope with the pain better. And when you're giving your body this Pitocin, your brain is not also producing those same endorphins that it does. So it is a little bit different. You'll hear some people saying that the contractions are much more intense with Pitocin. I don't know if there's really any research to back that up. I don't know if there's any research at all for this, but it's very likely that people perceive the Pitocin contractions more strongly because their body is not also releasing the endorphins. Also completely anecdotal, but I happen to think that when I see contractions being traced, when they're Pitocin contractions, they kind of have like a steeper slope going upward. So maybe from 0 to the top of the contraction, it goes much faster. I don't know. But, you will hear people saying that, and I don't know if there's research one way or another. Now, if your Pitocin is being used to induce your labor, okay, not to augment your labor, but to induce your labor, ask your provider about your Bishop score, which measures certain characteristics of your cervix, and each characteristic gets a certain amount of points. And when you calculate those points, it is a measurement to determine your likelihood of responding well to the Pitocin. The higher your Bishop score is, the more likely that your body will respond well to the Pitocin and go into labor, and you will achieve a vaginal birth. Ideally, the Bishop score should be 8 or higher, but 6 or 7 might be acceptable too, especially if you've had a baby already. The oxytocin receptors in the uterus need to be sensitive to the Pitocin that you're getting. And if they're not, then you can flood someone with all of the Pitocin in the world, but it will not put them into labor. So a Bishop score will help determine the ripeness of your cervix and your uterus into responding to that Pitocin. If your Bishop score is too low, then you may first need a cervical ripening, which I will cover in a future episode. Now we're just doing Pitocin.
If you have been struggling with nausea and vomiting from your pregnancy, Ematerm might be the answer for you. Ematerm is a safe and effective anti-nausea wristband that prevents and relieves nausea and vomiting induced by pregnancy or motion, such as car and boat rides. It releases a low-frequency pulse that travels through the body's nervous system to the part of the brain which controls the stomach. This interrupts the nausea signal pathways. Ematerm is FDA cleared and designed to put you in control when you need drug-free therapy with no worries about potential side effects. Users can choose from 5 levels of intensity to achieve the best effect. The unique wristband design holds the device in place and makes it easy to put on and take off. It is FSA and HSA eligible, comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and a 1-year warranty. Go to ematerm.com, that's EMETERM.com, and use code HAPPYBIRTHWAY for 20% off of your purchase. You can find the link in the episode show notes. Having a fussy, nonstop crying baby can take all the joy out of motherhood. Is it gas? Is it constipation? Is it colic? It's hard to know, but there is a solution for all of those. Happy Tummy is a waistband that comes with an herbal pouch. When you microwave the pouch and apply the waistband to your fussy baby, your baby is instantly soothed. That's thanks to a natural formulation of herbs including flaxseed, chamomile, lemongrass, peppermint, spearmint, and lavender. Happy Tummy is all natural, no drugs or drops. And not only does it quickly soothe your baby, but it smells terrific. Happy Tummy also has adult-sized waistbands, which mothers love for cramps, stomach aches, and backaches. Use my code HAPPYBIRTHWAY for 10% off your whole order on happytummy.com. That's HAPPITUMMI.com, code HAPPYBIRTHWAY for 10% off.
So Pitocin is given through continuous IV infusion and alongside fluids going in at the same time. Before starting the Pitocin, you will need to be monitored for at least 20 minutes. And when I say you will need to be monitored, aside from your vitals, you will be put on an external fetal monitor that will continuously trace your baby's heart rate and also trace your contractions. So usually, at least 20 minutes, and in some hospitals, they require like 30 minutes before the Pitocin can be started. It really depends on the policy of that particular hospital. You will need to be continuously monitored also, your baby and your contractions throughout the duration of getting the Pitocin. And this is because Pitocin is a high alert medication. It induces contractions, and a contraction can place a stress on your baby. So the first responsibility of any healthcare provider is that they have to do no harm. Therefore, when we are the ones that are inducing the contractions, we need to first establish your baby's well-being before we even start the Pitocin, and of course throughout the duration of the infusion. Besides for evaluating your baby's heart rate, your nurse is going to be continuously counting your contractions to make sure that you have a good contraction pattern. If you have too many contractions, and I will get to what that means in a little bit, but if you have too many, they cannot start the Pitocin. Everyone responds to a different amount of Pitocin, and we will not know how much Pitocin one will respond to until they are started on it, and it can differ from pregnancy to pregnancy. So just because you were on a small amount of Pitocin last time doesn't necessarily mean that you may not need a higher dose in the future, in the next labor, or you may, even during the actual labor, your response to the rate may vacillate. So someone can have the smallest, tiniest dose of Pitocin, and they can be banging out contractions. They can be, highly sensitive to it and responsive. And another person can be at the highest infusion rate, but still not be contracting a lot. And that's why everyone is started on the lowest rate of Pitocin, and your nurse will adjust it in increments according to the doctor or midwife's orders. In most hospitals, the rate that it starts at is 1 or 2 millunits per minute, which is usually 1 or 2 milliliters per hour, which literally it takes 30 minutes just for that amount to get through the IV tubing into your system. So you won't even start to respond to the Pitocin until you finish the full first dose, which is 30 minutes. The nurse can go up by 1 or 2, usually every 30 minutes, but not sooner. Now, this is just an overview, generalized idea of how it works with the Pitocin infusion, but there's different rules in different hospitals, so things differ a little bit, so keep that in mind. But this is, generally how it's done in the majority of hospitals that I've heard from people, and the hospitals that I worked at myself. But I will tell you that typically smaller increments are more favored. Again, because everyone responds to a different amount, and we don't want to give someone too much and stress their baby out. So it's better to go low and slow. So what happens between the adjustments in the Pitocin rate? Your nurse will be evaluating your contraction pattern and how your baby is responding during the contractions. Usually the nurse is charting on the baby's heart rate strip every 15 minutes. So it's really a lot of charting, a lot of time is dedicated to that. And an ideal contraction pattern that we want to achieve with Pitocin are contractions about every 2 to 3 minutes for 60 to 100 seconds long. And definitely not more than 15 contractions over the last 30 minutes. So too many contractions can actually be detrimental because A, it can stress your baby out more, of course, but B, also it's like doing bicep curls or any other exercises with your muscles. You need to have an adequate break between each bicep curl in order for the next one to be effective and to effectively contract your muscle. Not relaxing your muscle in between will make the next bicep curl less strong. And so it's the same with uterine contractions. The uterus is one large muscle, and in order to have a strong contraction, it needs a resting period in between. And also this resting period is important for your baby to reoxygenate its blood. I should note that contractions every 2 to 3 minutes is a textbook suggestion, but really the more important way to determine if the Pitocin is successful is if your cervix is changing. And that is the real definition of labor, a cervix that is changing. So remember that some people can have contractions every 5 to 6 minutes and still be making great change, and other people can have contractions every 2 to 3 minutes without good change. So don't get caught up in only the contraction pattern. You want to make sure that the Pitocin is helping for your cervix to change for labor to progress.
Before we continue, I wanted to let you know about a revolutionary diaper brand called Diaper, D-Y-P-E-R. These eco-friendly diapers are made with viscose from bamboo, so they're soft on your baby's skin while still being extra absorbent to handle your baby's biggest accidents. Diaper wants to pass on the savings directly to you by cutting out the middleman. They ship your diapers to you for a low, predictable price with no extras or gotchas. Set your subscription and let them deliver the exact quantity you need. If you need more, they'll deliver them promptly with their exclusive SOS service. If you need less, send them back with a prepaid label. You can precisely manage your deliveries using their website or their mobile app. One of the products that I think is really cool is their diaper sense. It's a small sensor that you attach to your baby's diaper, and it continuously monitors the temperature and humidity surrounding their skin. It will help you optimize your diaper changes, reduce overall diaper use, and may help reduce instances of skin rash due to prolonged exposure to moisture. All you do is snap it to the outside of the diaper and connect it to Diaper's app. It will notify you when number 1 or number 2 happens. Subscribe through the link in my show notes and you will get a free bonus diaper bag just for trying them out. You can cancel anytime with no obligation, but still keep the bag. KiwiCo crates are a monthly subscription of crates that come filled with age-appropriate STEAM projects for kids, from toddlers to teenagers and even adults. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Every crate explores a different theme designed to spark creativity, thinking, and learning. All projects, inspiration, and activities are created by a team of product designers in-house and rigorously tested by kids. KiwiCo offers all different product lines spanning a variety of interests and age ranges. Panda Crate is for babies from 0 to 24 months. Each crate helps babies learn by doing what they do best: playing, exploring, and most importantly, interacting with the people in their lives. Crates arrive every other month and are filled with 2 months worth of content. So if you're trying to figure out what a developmentally appropriate way to interact with your baby is, Panda Crates will take the guesswork out. For an exclusive 30% off discount on your first month subscription, go to kiwico.com, that's KIWICO.com, and enter code LEARN30 at checkout. That's kiwico.com, code LEARN30 at checkout.
This leads me to the topic of using Pitocin for labor augmentation. Keep in mind that, as I said earlier, the frequency of your contractions are not the true indicator of labor. Your cervical change is. And sometimes OB providers will see that your contractions are spaced out more than 2 to 3 minutes apart, and they may recommend, for that sole reason alone, to start you on Pitocin to augment your labor. Even if you're making change, even if you're in labor on your own, they may still believe that the Pitocin will make your contractions closer together and stronger and will thereby affect faster labor progress. That may not always be the case, and if there's no other concerns to expedite your delivery, the risks with having Pitocin, such as fetal distress, just may not be worth it for you. And in some hospitals, augmentation is very common and done for any patient in labor whose contractions are not happening every 2 minutes. So if there's anything less than 15 contractions in a 30-minute period, OBs or midwives will recommend the use of Pitocin. to augment the labor. Know that it ultimately comes down to a difference in care philosophy, the difference between actively managing a labor or expectantly managing a labor, where with expectant labor management, we just let things unfold. And this would be a great example of active labor management, where add some Pitocin in and hope that maybe it will be a good thing, that it will affect contractions that are more frequent, that are stronger, and that'll make your labor progress faster. So again, no one way is necessarily the wrong way. It's just a difference in philosophy of care. So it's a good conversation to have with your provider ahead of time to determine whether your philosophies align with theirs. And, if you're having any doubts or any questions, it can give you good food for thought. So now going back, when your Pitocin is infusing, your nurse may bump it up at the ordered intervals or scale it back if needed, or they can completely shut it off. If you're having too many contractions, then your nurse might scale back the Pitocin. Your nurse is also very carefully evaluating your baby's response to the contractions that are generated by the Pitocin. And if at any point they become concerned, they will shut off the Pitocin, and it is out of your system in 5 to 6 minutes. And that's the beauty of getting Pitocin through an IV infusion. It's reversible. So if your baby is not tolerating it, it can be shut right off, and then they can give you a lot of fluids to kind of wash it out of your system. And again, that's one of the reasons also why you have IV infusion of regular IV fluids going in at the same time as the Pitocin. Now, as to the definition of your baby not tolerating the Pitocin, that is a very gray area, and it can be quite a bit subjective. But know this, Pitocin for labor is never an emergency. I was taught this in my first year as a labor and delivery nurse by a brilliant senior nurse, and I've kept that with me for the rest of my career. If your baby needs to be born emergently, then you need a C-section. You may have medical indications that necessitate expediting your baby's birth, and that's what Pitocin is used for. But if there are any doubts about the use of Pitocin, you can always request for the pit to be shut off. It's within your rights as a patient. The medical staff sometimes might get impatient with you and annoyed. That's definitely common, but it is within your rights. And Pitocin is a high alert medication. And just like I said, being a nurse expert witness and seeing the cases that I've seen with the misuse of Pitocin, I really feel very strongly that I need to tell you this. And if you're planning an unmedicated birth, if you don't want an epidural and feel that you're starting to have a hard time coping with the pain of the contractions, if you feel like they're too close together, you can always ask for the rate to either be scaled back, or you can ask for the Pitocin to be shut off altogether and to see if your cervix is still making change without it or on a lower rate. And again, it's not an emergency. So you can always ask for that time. Your provider may not be the most patient about it. Know that ahead of time, but also know that it is within your rights. Once in a while, your labor actually may kick in on its own, but don't depend on that, because remember, your brain is not making the oxytocin. Your body's just receiving it from an outside source. And if your body stops receiving it, even if you're 8 centimeters, your labor might actually just stall because it's not receiving it anymore. So in addition to the Pitocin, there are other things that you can be doing to help your labor progress, and I will cover that in a future episode. But if you have any other specific questions about Pitocin, I encourage you to ask them by calling my question line at 203-759-8639, 203-759-8639. Tell all of your friends and subscribe or follow the podcast on whichever platform you listen to so that you can get notified of the upcoming episodes. And we're going to be talking more about Pitocin. I will be answering some of your questions further, and we're going to be talking about what else you can do to help with your labor progress. And of course, do not worry, the puppy episode is coming up as soon as possible. Also, please share this podcast with all of your pregnant friends because you never know how it can impact another's birth. Can't wait to see you guys soon again.
Thanks for tuning into the Happy Birthway podcast. Head over to Yoledet Academy on Instagram to continue the conversation. You'll find the link in the episode show notes, as well as links to any additional resources, products, and services mentioned here. If you love listening to this show, you can help it grow by sharing it with your friends and rating and reviewing it. To stay in the loop when new episodes are released, make sure to subscribe. Remember that your health needs are unique and require individualized medical advice. The podcast is not a replacement, and some of the information may not be appropriate for your specific circumstances. My mission is to educate you so that you can confidently collaborate with your healthcare team. I believe that a healthy mom and healthy baby are simply not enough. We also need a happy mom with an empowering birth experience.